When I was in college, I made friends with a fellow student there who, by my definition, was what I like to call a natural Christian. Virtues that so many other people have to work so hard to attain, to him just came naturally. He was, by every definition, a good young man. And that's why there seemed to be one striking anomaly in his personality, in that as good as he was, and although he was Catholic, he didn't go to church on Sunday. And it just didn't seem to fit with him. Well, one day I had the opportunity to discuss it with him, and he was very upfront with me. And he says, I used to go to church. He says, but then one day I'm sitting there with my parents, and I looked around at everybody that was there, and I said, look at all these people. They're here, and they have no idea what they're doing here. And he goes, I just got so disillusioned by it that I stopped going. Now, I remember several things I said to him. I said, how do you know that everybody there doesn't know what they're doing there and what it's all about, that they have no clue what's going on? I said, is it possible that you've projected upon them your own feelings, that you didn't understand it and were putting it on them? I said, and why would you let anybody else's lack of knowledge of what's happening affect your relationship with Jesus and your being there? I said, and then of course I said, yes, there are many people who come to church who pretty much know what's there. They understand why we go to church on Sunday, and they do it not because it's an obligation, but they do it willingly out of their love for the Lord and performing their duty before Him. I said, but all right, I said, it's certainly true there are some people who come to church and maybe don't really understand it all and don't really know why they're there. But I said to him, but at least they're there. Nobody put a gun to their head and forced them to come to church. They're there of their own free will. Something in them is telling them it's good for them to be there, even if they can't put words on it or explain to anyone else why it is that they're there. And I remembered, I recalled the story of the Transfiguration. And I told him, remember when Jesus took Peter, James, and John up the mountain, and Jesus was transfigured before them. He showed them a hint of the glory that would be his after he rose from the dead. He became dazzlingly white. And Moses and Elijah appeared speaking with him. Moses, the great lawgiver, Elijah, the great prophet. Moses had promised that the Lord would raise up one after him to be their Savior, and Elijah was the one who was supposed to come before the coming of the Messiah. The law and the prophets, which was an expression that the Jews used to summarize the entire teaching of the law. All of that standing there with Jesus, bearing witness to him and what he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem, meaning his suffering, death, and resurrection. And Peter looks at it, and he's amazed by what he sees. And he says to the Lord, Master, how good it is for us to be here, which is a great thing, wonderful. But then he puts his foot in his mouth when he says, let us build 3 booths here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. The evangelists even apologize for him because they say he hardly knew what to say. It made no sense. He missed the point of it all, did not catch what was happening at the Transfiguration. But when the vision was over and they were coming down the mountain, Jesus didn't chastise them. He didn't say, you fool. Didn't you understand everything that was happening there? How could you want to build booths rather than appreciate what was happening? No, Jesus knew it was beyond Peter's ability to understand. He was just a fisherman. Maybe a great theologian would have understood the significance of everything that was going on there, but not to Peter. It was lost on him. But he realized he had seen something good, and it was good for him to be there. And I said, just like that, when we come to church, it is good that we're there, even if we don't understand the fullness of what's happening. I said, for example, do we really understand, do any of us truly and completely grasp everything that's taking place when we come to Mass, when we celebrate the holy sacrifice of the Mass? St. John Vianney, the patron saint of parish priests, whose feast we celebrated yesterday, once wrote, if any priest truly understood what was happening at his hands as he celebrated Mass, he would die of fright. And there is a mystery going on here that is beyond anything you and I can even begin to fathom, even begin to imagine. And if the Lord tried to explain it all to us, probably it would just blow our minds. We'd say, whoa, I can't comprehend all this. This doesn't make sense to me. Here and now, in our finite minds and in our world, we can't grasp all the beauty of God, all the significance of everything he does for us each and every day. It's a mystery beyond our ability to grasp. It would be like, for us trying to understand everything about God, would be like trying to take a sponge and soak it in the ocean and expect the sponge to bring all of the water of the ocean out in the sponge. It can't do it. And when the sponge is saturated, the ocean doesn't even notice what's missing. It's insignificant to the amount of water in the ocean. And our lives are a mystery before God. We're not meant to know God and understand him completely. We can't understand God. Our finite minds cannot comprehend everything that makes God all goodness, all beauty, all truth, all essence. We can only see vain hints of it, the little things that God shows us. And God doesn't expect us to understand him completely. That's not what he wants us to do. Rather, like Peter, James, and John at the Transfiguration, he wants us to enter into the mystery and realize that you and I are never going to understand the ways of God here on earth. But know that we're entering the mystery of God being all goodness, all truth, all beauty, all joy, all love. And when something happens in our lives that doesn't seem to fit with that, if we don't see it, God working the way we think he should, sometimes, of course, we get rather annoyed and we may shake our fist at God and say, why aren't you doing what I think is right? But when that happens, and it happens, I'm sure, to all of us at some point, when we get to that point, rather than getting angry with God, maybe we can enter the mystery and say, well, I know, God, you are all goodness, all beauty, all truth. You can't do anything wrong. It's not like you're making a mistake and I'm going to correct you. But your ways are not my ways and I can't fathom them. But Lord, help me to understand what is happening here. What can I learn from this experience that will help me see the mystery of you more deeply? And if we can do that, then each and every day we'll be living the mystery of the Lord. And we'll discover that God is not a puzzle to be figured out. God is a mystery to be lived and loved and enjoyed and exalted in each and every day. God gave Peter, James, and John the wonderful privilege of seeing Jesus transfigured. You and I will see Jesus transfigured one day as well when we rise from the dead and he returns in glory. But in the meantime, may we enter into the mystery each and every day and allow the Lord to wow us, to fascinate us by everything we see. And especially when we come to Mass, even if we don't feel we understand completely why we do this, why we say that, what's going on here or there, know that we're in the presence of the mystery, whether we're at Mass or throughout the other moments of our lives. And may we always say at every moment what Peter said to Jesus, Master, how good it is for us to be here. May Jesus Christ be praised.